Welcome, friends, to the ninth episode of Coach by TripleDart. I'm Glenn Bona, your host and Associate Director of Organic Growth and Community here at TripleDart. And I'm excited for another installment of Coach, where we learn from today's B2B SaaS experts. Before we dive in, let me give you a quick overview about what we do here with this series. So let me share my screen. So TripleDart is a growth marketing agency focused on both paid and organic channels, primarily serving B2B SaaS companies. Established in 2021, our agency has grown quickly to a rock star team of over 70 marketing experts with offices in India, Singapore, and the US. We've had the honor of collaborating with some incredible companies and brands, including industry leaders like Sentinel One, ClickUp, and Freshworks. And if you're curious about how we can help grow your business, you can reach out to me or apply directly through our website, tripledart.com. Now, jumping into the Coach by TripleDart series that we launched a year ago and have hosted 10 stellar guests. And now it's the new year, 2025, and our mission continues. Once again, this series aims to offer everyone the opportunity to learn directly from seasoned marketing veterans and growth experts in the B2B SaaS arena. And our mission is to give you actionable insights and tactical knowledge that you can apply immediately after each session. In this episode, we dive into the world of Vision Labs, a leading data agency that specializes in creating customized measurement systems and insightful reporting dashboards. They integrate marketing, advertising, and sales data to provide comprehensive insights that drive business growth. And today, we have the privilege to learn from JJ Reynolds, the founder of Vision Labs. JJ and his team leverages Google Marketing Cloud to enhance business marketing strategies, increasing MRR by turning complex data into actionable insights. With a deep background in digital analytics and ad management, JJ crafts real-time dashboards that streamline decision-making and illuminate marketing effectiveness. And in today's knowledge share, we will dive into building a profitable marketing data system. We'll also explore self-audit techniques to help you assess and refine your marketing data practices. There's a lot more, but I'm just gonna hand it off to JJ. We're kicking off with a big one, so I hope everybody is ready. Without further ado, JJ, welcome to Coach by TripleDart.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. This is about to be a blast, everybody.
Yeah,
I hope that everybody has some coffee or your beverage of choice. It's going to get a little bit nerdy, a little bit strategic, and you're going to walk away with something you can do today and tomorrow. So that's the promise here ahead of things. All right, I'll go ahead and share my
all
screen.
right.
And if anybody doesn't see the screen, say something. You know, that's the inverse of what everyone else says. Okay, I'm hoping you guys can see this. We are going to be good to go. All right. Okay, I really hope you guys can see this. Can someone give me the double thumbs up that you can? Okay, awesome. Great, thanks so much. Okay, let's talk about building a profitable marketing data system. What does that mean? You're like, what on earth does that mean? And the goal is that your data can drive revenue. If anything, it can at least break even, right? Like that's the goal where you could say, hey, our data program that we're spending money on, whether it's through an agency like us or an internal team, don't care. We work with a lot of great internal teams and a lot of contractors. So we understand we need to figure out how to ROI this in some capacity. Who am I? Just in case you were like, I don't know who this guy is. Founder of Vision Labs. We work with companies usually between 5 and 300 million. We do have outliers on both ends of that in the billions and the single millions of the growth. I live in Reno, Nevada. So if you're in Lake Tahoe area, feel free to let me know. I really like volleyball and mountain biking. So if any of those things resonate or you're in the area, let me know. My PSA here is to grab a pen, paper, notepad, text editor, Word doc. I don't really care what you take notes with. In today's day and age, there's a million things. I'm also going to drop in the chat right now a Google Sheet where you can follow along if you would like to. With your team, you don't have to, but you can. No opt-in required. It is just lovely copy and paste. So here is the North Star goal, right, of every organization as a whole. Just swap out Vision Labs with your company if you would like, if you guys use an in-house team or another agency if you have that. Basically, you have this idea of you have a team, whether that's in marketing, whether that's a marketing director, marketing VP, growth, you, etc., you name it. They're then pushing buttons inside of ad platforms or your website, and they're writing content, they're doing things, they're writing ads, all that stuff. That information can get lost very easily where you're like, what are we trying to do? I don't even know. Like, are we trying to grow in SEO? Are we trying to grow in paid ads? Like, what's the return on investment of this ad? Like, do we run more ads? Should we run LinkedIn ads? What do we do? The goal is that that data then flows into some sort of warehouse. A Google Sheet is a warehouse. Someone will fight me on that. There's BigQuery on the other end of that in the Google Stack. Basically, you want to just store your data somewhere. You then have a team that is then using that information to build reporting in some capacity that you can then talk with about in like maybe Slack or something else. And then you can have calls to dive deeper into that. That is what that looks like on the outside of, hey, how does this actually function? What we're going to talk about today is how to self-audit, what symptoms you can see, and then what actions you can take. This is what we do every day for our clients, so I'm really comfortable talking about this. And if anyone does have any questions, just drop them in the chat. I'm always happy to answer questions. We do have an audit that you can work with us on where we run through all of these steps for you and then say, hey, here's how you can do this, but we're not here to talk about that. Here are the three elements that you need to know. Okay, this is what your data program should be doing. You should be able to field useful questions in a timely manner, right? So if you have questions from a team, you should be able to answer those questions, whether they're new or existing. You should be able to drive data pipelines. So for example, if you have running ads, you should be able to say, hey, here's conversions. We're sending that to the Meta gods and the LinkedIn gods and saying, hey, these are the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve. Let's do more of those. Right? There's also like really fun things where you can build audiences and reverse ETL and lookups and all that fancy stuff, but it should also be doing that. And lastly, it should lead to impactful actions where the team can ask a question that is useful, and then the action is inherent by nature of the system. Okay, those are the three core pieces that you can do using your data. All right, you should have your pen and paper by now or the copy of the sheet. We should be good to go. This is what we call the data order of operations, okay? Every single step builds on the previous step. You cannot skip steps. If you skip steps, everything falls apart down the line. I promise we've done it. We've tried to skip, doesn't work. We're going to start at conversion tracking. We're going to move our way up. And then we're ultimately end on forecasting, which is the holy grail of data, right? If you can say, hey, I think next month we're going to do $10.5 million in revenue, and you do 10.49, everyone is very excited. You're like, oh my goodness, we're very close. That's the holy grail of that. And so here we're going to give yourself a score, all right, of each of these steps. So your sheet looks a little bit different, but you're going to have the idea of step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. If you're on pen and paper, go in analog, just draw some lines like this. Okay, there we go. The rules here is for your company. 1 point, if you're not sure, you don't know, or you know it's wrong. Hey, that's okay. It's all right. We're going to start with saying, you're not sure what's happening, or you know that it's incorrect. 2, if we're doing it and you know how it works. 3, if you know why it is that way and you know what to do if that number is good or bad, right? So there's the rules. 1 point for you're not sure, 2 points for doing it, and then 3 points if you know why you're doing it. And this just helps us to say, hey, where's the starting point? Okay, max score is 27, minimum score is 9, average score is 15. Let's get into it. Okay, step number 1 is conversion tracking. This is what we like call table stakes. You should be doing this, and there is a good, better, best way of doing this. You want to send your data. So say, for example, you have a lead form or a trial or a PDF download, all those different types of things. You want to send those to the ad platforms. If you're running ads, you want to send those to Google Analytics if you're using Google Analytics or you're using some other type of measurement tool. You want to make sure that you have that as a line in the sand and saying, we did this thing. That allows those platforms to be more efficient, and then it allows you to start automating things along the way. In general, there's kind of a browser and a server. I'm not going to hop into it, but basically the browser's on the website, the server's in the cloud, and you can send data from your like CRM to the destination. There's a good, better, best there on that capacity. So what you want to try and do is say, hey, we can send this data. We know which leads or which type of things, whether that's purchases or leads or upsells. You're sending all that data in a granularity your team can act on. In general, you can start with just leads, right? Where you have, say, hey, we had 1,000 leads. But you want to break that down and say, hey, we have 500 PDF downloads, we had 200 trials, and we had 300 webinar registrations. That is much more helpful. All right. Conversion tracking. Do you know what's wrong? You're not sure what's happening. Two, we are doing it and we know how it works. Three, we know why and we know what to do if it's not right. Right. So there you go. There's your score. You should be good to go. All right. There we go. You can write your little box. Number two, we're sending events on the thank you page. And I need to look up server-side tracking for tomorrow. Oh, right. Now we have a tag management system. That's level 2 on the do. We want to start centralizing that so that your team can be quick and nimble. We have one client that has over 40,000 pages of their website. It's a really big content site. It would be a nightmare to do this all manually. You have to have a tag management system so you can use variables to then organize and orchestrate what is being collected on the site. Again, we have a browser and a server. Good, better, best here. The goal here is that you can centralize things from one location, and instead of firing things on a thank you page, you're starting to use things that are more complex and use data layers and use structures, and you're going to use webhooks from your CRM to send that data to your tag management system, and then you can take it from that tag management system and send it on to different destinations. The two major players in this, which are like kind of competitors and kind of not, is like Google Tag Manager on the free side. I think every single one of our clients uses Google Tag Manager. And then you have Segment, which is like the CDP. There's RudderStack, a bunch of those type of things where it's like a CDP and tag management in one. You should still use Tag Manager and you should also use both. But the goal is that you centralize that location, right? Okay, we've got number 2. These are starting to get more complex as you go up this ladder, right? So we've got these conversion tracking, tag management system. Now we are going to get into strategy, okay? This is where you have your ideal plan. The ideal plan is something that we really try to say there are 2 types of usage of data, okay? One type of data usage is where you say, what happened, right? So that's where you this happens a lot of times inside of product analytics tools, where you say, hey, well, we had 30 purchases. Why did they purchase, or how did they purchase? And you're like, oh, they saw the landing page. Cool. The problem with that, there's a time and place for that, but the problem is you don't know how many people saw the thing to even opt in. You could have had 1,000,000 people see that opt-in page, and you had 37 signups, and you're like, we're at a 0.000001% conversion rate on that page, but you wouldn't know that if you looked back from starting from the bottom and looked up. So when I say expectations and outcomes, what we try to get our clients to do is say, what are you trying to do? Are you running ads to a landing page to then try and get a trial? Are you running content plays of having SEO and arbitrage other people's audiences? What are you actually trying to do, and how does that expectation meet that outcome? Here's a couple of different examples of very different scenarios. The first one is looking at the first order profit, right? So the idea here is saying, we want to be profitable on the first transaction. Maybe you have a software that has a startup fee, right? So it might be, hey, we're $100 a month, but there's a $2,500 activation fee, just as an example. The goal of $2,500 is to liquidate the acquisition cost. So now you're at break even on day 0, right? It's a very different plan than if you're venture backed and trying to like grow and like take a loss later on day 1. But what are you trying to do? You can't have a plan of what your reporting should look like, of what your cost of goods should they even be accounted for, if you do not know what you're trying to accomplish. So we have one client that tries to be daily profitable, meaning acquisition of net new customers is a break-even cost for the company. At the same time, we have another customer who's basically trying to have this referral engine. Think of like the Dropboxes of like the OG, where it was like, hey, we're gonna give accounts, and then if you refer 5 people, you get a gigabyte for free or whatever the scenario was there, where you're playing a longer term game. And so you're saying, hey, we have 1,000 signups. We had 750 people that completed the onboarding. We had 400 people that activated the usage. We had 200 people that added to our new MRR goals, and then 100 of them referred someone else. And that goal is to happen in 90 days. So now we have a payback period of 90 days. We still have an expectation. Is that expectation being met? If not, we need to adjust our systems. The data is fueling that, right? So it's a cyclical thing where you start, then you keep iterating, and you say, did the plan achieve the outcome? And I promise you will not be perfect. You will say, hey, we're trying to do this thing. And the first time you write this down, and the first time you have your data team pull something or build a report and have a structured system, it won't work. I promise. But then you can iterate on that. And I'd say in general, you're going to look at like 3 to 6 months to try and get this in a way that both the communication and the data execution can marry up. It's not a quick process. No one likes to have things just put in front of them and said, do something. It's hard. So you'll have people on your team being like, I'm trying my best. I'm trying. It's really hard. But you can work towards a better tomorrow. All right. So now we have 3 steps here, right? Maybe your plan is like, we do not know what's going to happen next month, and we're not sure how to achieve it. Maybe you have a better, really solid plan of like, hey, we're trying to be first order profitable. We're trying to break even after 90 days. It doesn't matter what your plan is. You could say, hey, I want to break even in 7 years. I think that's what Purple Mattress tried to do. You can make up whatever plan you want to, but you have to marry that to the expectation and to the outcome. All right, we're working our way up this, guys. I promise it's going to get even more exciting as we go. So now that you have your plan, we can layer on behavioral tracking. This is where people start to really enjoy things because you have this combination between web analytics of saying, I'm going to call web analytics anonymous users, and then you have product analytics, which is de-anonymized. That's supposed to have a D in front of it. So de-anonymized users where you know who they are. The goal of these 2 different platforms, sometimes the same platform, is that you can track the behaviors up until the conversion that you're trying to achieve, either in that session or for that user. Here are a couple of examples of what that looks like. So oftentimes you have clicks, you have scrolls, you have feature usage, they completed a sequence, they interacted in a certain way, and then maybe they open certain user interactions, right? You have all those types of ideas of saying, open user interactions, close user interactions of saying, what did they do? Did they do the sequence in order? Did they start here and end over there? We don't know how it achieved. And then you can say, was it web analytics, meaning was it anonymous, or is it product analytics, where we know who that person is? It really helps frame things better because as the internet has evolved, it used to be web analytics was just tracking hits on the site. And then as the internet has evolved, there's now product analytics tools that are like tracking all these clicks and scrolls. And people try to make their web analytics tool do that as well, but then they're de-anonymized. And so we want to try and say, again, our plan, and then we have our web analytics tools and our product analytics tools, and we can marry them all together in one big happy family. So do you have behavioral tracking on your site so you know, are people watching your demo video? Are people doing these things in the sequence that you wanted to? Maybe exactly like this. Maybe we have all of these being collected and know how they map to our plan. Ta-da! You guys are doing great. And next step is visualization. And this is where people go wrong, I'd say 99% of the time, is they hop into trying to build visuals for either C-suites or marketing departments or practitioners. And it's hard, guys. It is very difficult to do this in a very recurring, systematic way. This is the one quote I would highly recommend that you just marinate in for a moment. Is I would have made it simpler, but I didn't have enough time to do less. Right? So that is something that is so true. I push our team every single day of like, how can we make this simpler? It's very hard to make something that's simple and easy to understand when you have very complex data systems, right? You're trying to be like, hey, I need to know what we need to do so I can get back to executing. If you do have a team or you have a person on staff or you have an agency, I would say there's the rule of thumb is like, I call it like the 5-5-5 rule. So you should have like 5 minutes every 5 days and you should know what to do in those 5 minutes. That is a very good rule to kind of say, is my reporting serving my needs, or do I have to spend 7 hours in this thing to try and figure out what I need to do? Work with a team like us, and we try to work with you to build reporting that you understand. Uh, I always like to give the example of like there's the matrix where like people like read rows and columns and numbers and everything else, and you're like, oh, this over here correlates to this, and you're just looking at numbers. On the other side, there's people that are more like the Sesame Street type of people where it's like a big bold one, a big bold two. There's almost no correlation between how good of a marketer you are and how good you are at reading those numbers, but people are how you like. Um, so how most people view this presentation is more charts, right? Like, oh, let's add all these charts on. And then you have the person who's supposed to be using it and is like, ah, too long, didn't read. Sorry, I don't know what we're doing here. I'm going to keep doing what I was doing because I don't know what this is telling me. Uh, your visuals are here are a couple of examples of like trying to simplify things as much as we possibly can. We try to say, hey, what was the plan, right? The previous steps. Step number 3, what was our plan? What is the execution? And what's the difference between those plan and execution? That gives us a goal and a target, and we know what we're trying to do. Your ideal plan here, for example, we have a target, right? So maybe you have a session to product view, or you have a session to a demo view, conversion rate. Like, what were you trying to do? Was it trying to be 50% of people on the page? Was it trying to be 10%, 100%? You have to have a target, again, back to your plan, so that you can build visuals that have a meaningful outcomes. So you can say, if this number is not 40%, what do I do? That's a question people don't like to ask. Here we try to always have targets. Just a couple of examples here. Okay. Visuals are the symptom of steps 1 to 4. People don't like to think about that, is that you have to plan first. Your conversion tracking, your tag management, everything fuels and rolls up into your visuals. If you don't do that right, it just starts to collapse. Uh, One thing you can always ask, this is really helpful, is if you do work with C-suite people of they're kind of more above the day-to-day operations, is like you go to them and say, "Show me what you look at to make a decision." Oftentimes, you'd be surprised what you come back with when you ask that question. I've seen everything from server logs to a spreadsheet that is updated manually, uh, and they're running $100 million company, and you're like, "What?" Uh, so just keep in mind, it's a great question to ask. Show me what you look at to make a decision. And again, if you want us to do this, visionlabs.com/audit, fill out a form, and we can help you guys run through this entire system. Oh, right. So maybe your visuals, we are manually pulling sheets to figure out what happened. There you go. Oh, right. Now we're getting to the more spicy technical things. All right. This is when you accidentally eat a jalapeno instead of a bell pepper. This is where we start to have some fun. Is first-party data and blended metrics. I'm going to simplify this a lot. Is that first-party data is when you own it. Okay, I don't care whether it's anonymous or de-anonymous. You have kind of 3 general ideas is saying customer data, that's your CRM, your customer profiles. Maybe you have platform data, so that's like paid media, SEO, Google SEO, number of impressions, historic outcomes. Those are the types of things that you'd think of as far as platforms, ad spend, uh, those types of things. And then lastly, you have feedback, so quizzes, surveys, those types of things. Uh, in general, those are the 3 buckets of pieces of information. Uh, we use the Google Stack, Google Sheets, and then there's BigQuery, which you graduate into. Just think of BigQuery as Google Sheets on crack, right? If you run out of cell limits and Google Sheets at about 5 million cells is when things start to slow down. BigQuery will take 5 million cells like it's a Tuesday afternoon and be done in 0.5 seconds. A little more technical, but if you can centralize everything in one spot, it gives you the ability to build almost anything. Uh, yeah, so you can manage future complexities in one location. Complex plans, you can build better relations between the data, you can store it forever. An under utilized feature is the fact that most ad platforms, all platforms have an expiration date of your data. I think with Google Analytics, it's like 12 or 16 months. Meta ads, for example, is I think 36 months, so you can't look back beyond 36 months. So for example, say you started today, you can pull 36 months of ad spend, but you won't be able to see it before that. All right, so just keep in mind, all platforms have an expiration date unless you pull that off that platform. So First party. We have a complex system. We use Google Sheets, but it would be nice to have save us time. You can keep going from there. All right. So now reverse ETL and data sharing. This is probably the biggest value. If you nail all these steps, this is where you have this incremental, you've been working with incremental gains, and this is where it's an exponential gain. Is that you can then send data, what happened after the fact, back to an ad platform or back to your CRM. So if you know that somebody has purchased and they became an enterprise client, you can send that group of customers back to your ad platform to find more people and lookalikes and run ads and or conversion data. One big benefit of BigQuery, now that I'm pushing that, is that you can actually sync tables of customer data to Google Ads in real time for conversions. So you could say, hey, here's a list of all of our emails that have converted. And then Google Ads will sync to that with a click ID. And now you have a little simple reverse ETL that's built into Google. No extra technology required. It's really helpful to know long-term outcomes, right? If you have a long deal cycle, a long outcome, does Google Ads know to optimize towards that or not? Really helpful with ad platforms, but it also can take into effect when you have a CRM that you know that people have visited your website and you're trying to sync things between platforms. So just think data sharing, sharing data between platforms. Uh, Couple of examples here. Again, leads, qualified sales. Send all those events to your ad platforms if you're running any amount of ads, LinkedIn, Facebook, doesn't matter. You can then start training that AI of the ad platform or algorithm, whatever you want to call it, to then build towards that outcome. Here's a simple segmentation. If we think of a lower ticket software here, a lower ticket direct response. You could have whales, big frequent buyers. Maybe they are on an enterprise plan, or maybe your usage-based credits. You have, let's just say, for example, maybe they buy team plans, buy credits once every quarter, and they're spending $10,000, which is outside of the normal. Let's find more people like that. Maybe you have low trials frequently, so they're flirting with you. Fast buyers or lead to sales above average. Those are kind of three buckets of examples here of if you could find these customers, you can go to the ad platforms and say, I'd like to find more of these if you have enough of them. I'd say about 1,000 of each bucket is where you want to start, and then you can go up from there. All right, so now you have data number 7. I have no idea if we are doing this. Could we? That's usually what most people are. Again, it's no problem. You just want to identify where you are and then what a better tomorrow looks like. And then you can go do some research because we know where the better tomorrow looks like. So we are here on our final 2. We have costs and forecasting. This is going to be a little bit quick because everyone's eyes kind of roll over when this. So finance and marketing is where your costs come into play. Okay. So everyone doesn't like finance if you're in marketing, and everyone in marketing or finance doesn't like marketing. It's honest like oil and water in most companies. But what we want to say is, how are we trying to be profitable? At what point do we want to make money? And some software companies, again, are delayed. Some companies are like, we need to make every money on every single outcome. It doesn't matter. You can make any plan you want to, but finance and marketing must be talking together. So for example, we have fees, we have the cost to deliver, we have the cost to acquire. In general, those are the 3 main costs. If there are any type of fees, there's a cost to deliver the actual product. Say you have an implementation team, or if you're shipping a physical good, or you have a cost of a web server, whatever it might be. And then you have cost to acquire, right? And so if you know that cost, maybe it's on a per month basis, well, now you can look at that contribution margin and say, hey, every sale that we drive, how much extra money do we have to acquire more customers? So do you just take contribution margin is usually fees and cost to deliver and capital expenses, and then you have the actual ability to go acquire more customers, knowing that that's your profit. Again, software companies don't want to talk about this at all. It's a really the forbidden fruit of the software world. E-commerce has pioneered this because they have a really expensive cost of goods, But I think it's now trickling down into software of saying, hey, how fast do we need to make this money back? Do we want to be first order profitable? Do we want to have a break-even point? And do we know what an average lifetime value looks like for each cohort of customers? What does this look like? You can start taking things and putting them into, say, your cost per leads, your cost per order, your cost per sale. The other way to look at this is your average revenue per lead, your average revenue per order, your average revenue per sale. And then you can have average profit per lead, average profit per order, and average profit per sale. If you can dive into these numbers, which most people really don't like to look at, it makes marketing so much more efficient because you know how much we're costing per lead, how much we're revenue per lead that we're generating, and how much profit per lead. The pro tip to this is that you need to tie it to time. What I mean by that is that you might have a profit over 36 months. Well, that's not that helpful, right? Because you need to look at 12 months of profit or 12 months of revenue per lead or 12 months of cost per leads to really tie that down so you know you have enough money to make sure you can keep acquiring more customers, right? It's a structure that everything builds up to. But if you don't know this, it becomes very, very difficult to make more decisions and saying, how much can I spend to acquire a lead? On this, one last thing. We actually had a customer that came in and said, we can spend infinite money if we can break even in 90 days. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's build out how we want to visualize this, how we want to structure that information, how we want to visualize that. And we came to the conclusion of, okay, currently we are making money after 90 days. Like your profit. So you could spend more uh, to try and drive more sales, and we can watch that cohort go through time. And so they were able to grow more efficiently only because they knew they could spend more because they had enough cash flow to make that 90 days. Again, finance plus marketing, the only way you can have that conversation of getting budget allocation without having to like shake the tree of budget. It becomes really a much more systemized approach of here's the number we're trying to influence. Hey, finance team, I need money. Here's the money we're going to use to drive that growth. And lastly, here's the holy grail, folks, is how do you forecast? uh, in general, most companies say next year we're going to 1.5x. That's our forecast. And then they're like, cool, that's it. Your forecast needs both marketing and finance. If you do have a forecast, I want you to pull that up right now. And you can say, why is that your number? Is it based off of marketing actions? Is it based off of finance input? Is it based off of a new plan? Or has something changed? Those are your four main indicators of changing the outcome. By default, right, you're probably going to do less, right? So less revenue will happen if you don't do anything. So if you keep marketing as the same level of input, you might hold the same level of growth or hold the same. Or are you going to have more finance injection, right? Or you're going to have a new plan. We're going to go after enterprise accounts or small business accounts, or we're going to have group plans, or we're going to have group hotel rooms, or we're going to go after individual low cost hotel rooms with the idea of driving more future lifetime value while they're at a stay, for example. Uh, Again, those are all examples of how you can say, what is our projection going to be? The biggest input to growth is usually marketing action. So you either have to have budget to say, hey, we need more marketing actions to take place. We need to have financial input of saying we need to have more budget to achieve that. Or we have a new strategy or a new plan that no one has ever heard of. And we're like, we're going to break the system by doing this reverse lead funnel that is negative CAC. And so that's in general. Again, your forecast has to have that. You can run a bunch of aggregations and you can run a bunch of forecasts that take into account monthly recurring revenue, etc. But at the end of the day, your new customer acquisition is driven by these four inputs. So now you should have a grid or at least some type of score now of where you are and where you would like to be. In that sheet I shared at the beginning of this, you should say, hey, here's where I am. I know about this. It takes a lot of self-awareness to write down, I don't know what's happening, and that's totally okay. We also do these audits every month of companies and say, hey, here's all these steps lined out. Here's where we are. Here's how you're currently making decisions. It is a skill, right? And you're going to have to keep iterating on this because you need to make the system simpler. It's very easy to have a complex system. It's very hard to have a simple system. So, what is your score? If you were following along, I would love to hear what your score looks like because that is something that is really, really helpful for your own teams to know of that. Um, yeah, I think that's the gist of everything here. If you have any questions, I guess now, Glenn, if you want to hop back in, or if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. I'm an open book when it comes to how do you actually do any one of these steps.
Awesome, JJ. Thank you so much for the enlightening presentation and for the deep dive on how we can transform our marketing data into that profitable asset. So during your presentation, we've received a couple of questions. So let's take a couple of minutes to jump into those now. Number one is, what are the most common mistakes companies make when tracking conversions? And how can we fix them to ensure that our revenue forecasts are accurate?
Yeah, I'd say there's two main culprits there. One is that you have this weird technology stack that is causing you huge headaches where you have something on WordPress and then you have this on Webflow and then you have embedded Calendly forms and you have then HubSpot over here that then goes to Salesforce and that was like what's a conversion? Like what is a lead? Is a lead of like what everyone's trying to fight about a lead because Calendly has leads and then HubSpot has leads and Salesforce has leads. Um, the simplest way is like have a website that has forms and then use those forms to then send that to like HubSpot or wherever you're going, because then you can use that form as a source of truth to send data to ad platforms or to your web analytics tool. Because most of the time you're not tracking things correctly. You're either overcounting, where you say, hey, this was a form submission and it was actually an error, or you're dramatically undercounting because you don't know the form even exists because someone on marketing made a form on like some random software and you're like, we're gonna try this landing page builder. So that's like I think to the biggest culprit is that. Um, Also, the other part of that, the first one is tech stack. The second one is not knowing what you're trying to do on the website, of knowing what a conversion actually is, right? There are a lot of systems out there, and like to say, hey, we have leads, and then say what type of leads do you have, right? That's the straightforward answer. And then if you do have purchases or trials or however you get money on the internet, uh, how do you want to do more of that?
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Centralize everything into a form and then have the data go out from there. Cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. The next question is, how can we keep our marketing data consistent and accurate when using tools like Funnel.io alongside our internal systems? So I'm assuming that goes back to like forms again, right? Like that's one of the answers.
Yeah, like I'd say the biggest problem is that you have these like off platform metrics, right? Like Facebook's leads or LinkedIn leads or any one of those type of things. All of those types of functions, the problem is that they're off platform and you're like, okay, why is the ROAS in Facebook's 3.7 whereas uh our CRM says that we had 37 leads and 4 sales, right? And so what you like when you're using a platform like Funnel or any type of thing, the strategic layer of what we're trying to accomplish and knowing that from both the ad platform perspective and your owned perspective, meaning like the CRM or whatever your like your cart system if you're selling something, you have to know how those play together. Sometimes you can just have a really, really big funnel. For example, say you have like a big content site where you just are a big brand. The second you turn on ads, your ROI is gonna be massive because you have this huge audience of people. But as time goes on, that audience will get smaller and smaller. So how do you reconcile those between the ad platform and what's actually happening? And that is where you get the most success.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Karthik asks a pretty broad question. Maybe Karthik, you could specify a little bit, but he simply states how to get started. And I'm assuming that's just maybe just getting started with conversion tracking, making sure that that's in place correctly. Um, JJ, what do you think in terms of a broad sense, how to get started?
Yeah, I would just like start if you don't have if you're like, hey, I don't know anything about any of this, I would just start with like on a piece of paper. It's a lot easier. Like write down the user journey of saying people are supposed to go to this page and they're supposed to fill out this form, or they're supposed to like book this call, or they're supposed to do whatever they're supposed to do. Write down every possible way into your system on a piece of paper, and then figure out how you're going to tell either an analytics platform like Google Analytics on the one end, and if you're running ads, the ad platform. How are you going to tell them that this form was submitted? Start there, and then start going up from there.
Awesome. Yeah, that simplifies a lot when you can kind of just write everything out, that whole journey, and then figuring out which are the events, which are yeah, the forms that I want to build out, and maybe even the landing pages and all of that. Cool. Well, I think that covers most of the questions. Um, JJ, you've covered a ton of ground in the last 45 minutes, and I'm sure we all appreciate the strategies you've outlined, the scoring system. Uh, and just a quick note to our audience, we'll be sharing a recording of today's Coach by Triple Dart session, along with the slides and along with JJ's spreadsheet that he shared in the chat earlier. So be on the lookout for that email soon, and feel free to share it with your colleagues in case they might find it helpful. So spread the word. Before we wrap up, JJ, for anyone looking to connect or follow you or follow up with questions about the presentation, where can they find you?
Yeah, so if you go to visionlabs.com, that's probably the easiest way. Or if you would like, you can always find me on LinkedIn, just JJ Reynolds. I'm one of the few JJ Reynoldses there are. So if you type in just two J's and then it's the same way you spell Ryan Reynolds, uh, there I am on LinkedIn. So I'm usually there. I try to hang out pretty often. So yeah.
Awesome. We'll include those details in our recap email and also on the YouTube description once this session is published. And if you're interested in diving deeper into marketing data systems, don't hesitate to reach out to JJ. He's super kind, super helpful. And yeah, connect with him on LinkedIn. You can also connect with us through the Triple Dart website. We'd love to start a conversation with you as well. JJ, thanks once again for today's insightful session. I know our audience is eager to start applying some of the lessons that you've shared or the learnings that you've shared today. So we truly appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with us at Coach by Triple Dart.
Been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cool. And thank you everyone for joining once again. And yes,